Some playoff scores from last night. On the ice, the Panthers take a commanding 3-0 lead in their series against Tampa, a 5-3 road victory. The Hurricanes have the same lead over the Islanders as they went to New York and won 3-2. On the hardwood, the Magic destroyed the Cavaliers 121-83. A 50-burger from Joel Embiid. The Sixers beat the Knicks 125-114.
The
Nuggets continue to kill the Lakers 112-105 the final. They're up 3-0 in that series over L.A. From the Corwell Health Sports Desk, I'm Chris Villar. For more, go to 97.1 The Ticket and Odyssey.com.
It's NFL Draft
Hi, buddy.
Week.
Live from Buffalo Wild Wings downtown Detroit, Karsh and Anderson, brought to you by Sarah Chevrolet.
On 97.1 The Ticket.
We are back, and it feels like we were just here, our draft headquarters in downtown Detroit, right across the street from backstage of the National Football League Draft. Doug Karsh, Scott Anderson, Kang Wynn back in our studios. We got Bobby running the show. We got Ben on the Twitch feed. And the Twitch feed today, Gator, I am reeking. Right now, I am dead tired guy, and I'm doing something that just says, I just made it. I made it here, and that's good enough, and that is...
Oh, the sweatpants? Yeah. I thought you were going to say the hat on backwards,
sweatpants,
the 5 o'clock shadow, or the 2-day shadow, whatever you got going on there, you hairy bastard.
Yeah.
And the droopy eye.
Sweatpants to work day.
Yeah.
But that's the kind
of
day.
That's what the kids do these days.
But you know what? The place, it really isn't even open yet. We still got chairs on the table. There's not going to be anybody in here for a while. I'm like, to hell with it. It's sweatpants to work. I got shorts on underneath, though, just in case I need to. Gets a little hot in here, which it did last night, and it was packed, and Lions fans were fired up, and boy, did we have fun.
It was a good time.
Yep.
Really good time last night, and, you stayed here basically the whole time downtown.
16 hours at B-Dubs. It was an animal day.
I went home after the show, and as I was walking towards the parking garage, I remembered that my buddies, the Mugs, were playing at one of the outdoor areas back behind Cliff Bell's. So I went over there.
And when Gator found out, by the way, he was gone.
Well, yeah. Well, the other thing, I had to get home to let the dog out anyway. So I only got to see the Mugs play for a few songs and kind of wave to the guys and then headed home. So I got to see like how the partying was going outside the footprint, and it was amazing. The whole Grand Circus Park area, everybody having a good time. There were, a million places to eat, a million places to grab a drink. It looks like the Porta-Johns were aplenty, at least at that time of the day, that there weren't lines and stuff. And it was just nice. So I went home, and then I started to head back downtown at 6:30 last night. And I'm thinking, is this going to be a complete S show? I was concerned about parking. We had heard some horror stories about some parking and stuff. And it ended up being just fine. There was traffic coming down the lodge, but it wasn't terrible. It was like a typical game day, and I managed to get in pretty quickly. And then walking from the garage over here to B-Dubs, which is, half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, everybody just have smiles on their face, drinking, having a great time, looking around, buying stuff, merch, lots of merch.
Yep.
A sea of Honolulu blue. The other thing that's cool is to see the other cities represented. And you saw jerseys and gear from every team in the National Football League, which was awesome, but not too much, because they were outnumbered 100-1,
right?
If not 1,000-1.
Yep.
It was amazing to see the sea of blue when the draft started. We only got to see it on TV because we're on the air while it's happening. I can only imagine, and I do want to hear from the people that stood out there, not only just in the footprint of the NFL experience there, but the people that got into that bandshell area to watch the draft up close and personal. How insane was it to be there with your fellow Lions brethren, shoulder to shoulder, and a sea of Honolulu blue on the national stage, and we hit a grand slam?
Yeah, I mean, look, we have no point of reference because this is the only draft that well, that's not true. I went to the Chicago draft, and it was pretty good. But the people that go every year are talking about this setting the bar, and that's really cool. I mean, it was a good day for Detroit. It was a good day for the Lions, and hopefully you had a good day. I mean, there were inconveniences, but that's what comes with major events. My family came down here and spent a lot of time trying to find a place to park. But that's, again, no complaints, right? That's Okay. Oh, wait, Detroit's now too popular? I mean, that's what you deal with. But all in all, I would say kudos to the people that put this thing on. And, there are things that I'm sure that they'd like to hone in and be better. And we could all, discuss those things moving forward. But still, Detroit looked great on television. I was listening to some network stuff, and they were praising the city and the fan base because, hey, let's face it, we kind of broke the draft. We shut the thing down early in the night, which was also great for all the local businesses because now I'm sure there are people that wanted to get in, and it sucks that you didn't get in, but there's today and there's tomorrow as well. And, hey, I bet they didn't get their cars and go home. They went and found a place to watch the draft. And we got to get into the football part of it. Just a reminder, we're streaming on twitch.tv and youtube.com. Go to twitch.tv, search up 971 The Ticket, and see us looking like death warmed over. You can also go to youtube.com, same thing, search up 971 The Ticket, and bam, there we are. And we're leading into Tiger Baseball this afternoon. Let's welcome in Kang Wynn, our producer from back at the 97.1 The Ticket Command Center. And Kang, you were sort of our eyes and ears on the television part last night. And we were in communication throughout the night as well. But overall, your thoughts, my friend?
I was just so happy and so proud to see that the city showed out. The whole state of Michigan showed out. Southeast Michigan, Metro Detroit. When I was thinking about coming down there, but there's also value for me being at home because you guys are already down there. And so from my point of view, seeing the aerial shots, hearing about the gates getting locked because they've hit capacity. At first it was paused. And then like 5 minutes later, they put out a report goes, no, we're not just pausing it. We're done. We've hit capacity. You guys have done an unreal show up. It was amazing to see from home. And I was thinking about going down there. And I live about 35 minutes away from the city or so. And I saw traffic backed up the other way. And I'm like, why is everyone going the other way? It's the opposite of rush hour normally. And I look in their cars, and everyone's got football jerseys on. And I'm thinking, holy cow. I mean, this is just my area. It's probably coming from all ends of Metro Detroit. If everyone knew somebody that was down there. That's how I feel. And it looked amazing. Great job by the city. Great job by the state of Michigan. Everyone involved, the NFL, the Lions. Great job.
All right, so we do have a football player to talk about, a new Detroit Lion. It is a name that we, quite frankly, were going to veto if anybody said they would take him at 29, and he came dangerously close to 29, and who knows if he would have made it to 29. I suspect not, but the Lions didn't take the chance. They gave up a third-round pick to get what we have to assume was in their top bucket. One of their top buckets, like if they were at the top of the draft, this player very well might have been in play, and Brad Holmes talked about how at the corner spot, they had the name Terion Arnold and a line and a big gap to the next guy. So they thought that this was the guy in the draft that was worthy of a high first-round pick, and they got him. They got him at 24. And what does it mean on the field? We will talk about that next. From Buffalo Wild Wings, our draft headquarters, it's Carson Anderson, 97.1 The Ticket. Hey,
24th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Terion Arnold, defensive back, Alabama.
That was the pick last night as it went down, and you heard it here on 97.1 The Ticket, and Detroit exploded. We asked people today, now they had to give up a third-round pick, right? And that's, you know, the fun of having Brad Holmes here is watching him do work in rounds other than the first round. And we'll get to that pick in a second, but that came at a cost. It came at a cost in that, you know, it's not, they gave up what is going to be a chance at a player in the third round, and we'll see who's on the board, and maybe we'll find out that there was nobody on the board that we particularly would be interested in anyway in the third round, but we don't know what that cost is exactly yet. But it's okay. Like they've started to shift. You can see them shifting into win now mode here a little bit. But we asked people on Twitter, and you got another hour plus to vote. Did you love it? Did you like it? Do you not like it? Or do you hate it? And we've had over 1,400 votes so far. Right now, love it, 74.3% of the vote.
That's a big portion.
Like it, 23.7% of the vote. Don't like it, 1.4% of the vote. Hate it, 0.6% of the vote.
I'm surprised there's a 0.6. No, honestly, I mean, what's the reason to not be approving of this? Is it why? Because they give up a third-round pick to get the best corner possibly available in the draft? I mean, Quinyon Mitchell was great too. I mean, split hairs between the two. I don't care which one they get. I honestly thought that Terion Arnold would not be there. I thought he was going to be the first corner off the board. The fact that he was there at 24, and we're all looking at this like, are they going to please make a move? How do you make a move? We talked about it with with the Dolphins and their pick, and is this where the Lions trade? And thinking it could be Arnold, could be Mitchell at that point, and then Philadelphia takes Mitchell. I don't know why anybody would be upset. It's the cost of doing business, and they didn't give up a second-round pick. They gave up a third-round pick. And that player, how high would you have moved up to get that player going into the draft?
Well, I wouldn't have think 5 spots would get it done.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah. So, he said last night, I'm a star, okay? Well, let's talk about what he might be. If he is an average corner in the NFL and is on the field against San Francisco, the Lions are better in the NFC title game. If he's an average corner in the NFL. If he's an above-average corner in the NFL, I feel much better about the Lions winning at San Francisco.
Yeah.
If he is a star in the NFL, wow.
We're celebrating a parade.
I mean, then that's a team that, because the mistakes in the secondary in the second half of that game are ones that are kind of haunting, but we know what it was. I mean, there were guys on the field because of injuries, and they did their best, and I'm not mad at them. But if they did get a star, the secondary, the whole team is better. If they got a slightly above-average player, the secondary is better. Like, if you think about this secondary, with the additions of Carlton Davis, Amik Robertson, and Terion Arnold at the corner spot, this is a better group of corners than they had last year at any time. And Emmanuel Mosley maybe.
I was just going to say, and hopefully Mosley can stay healthy and you could see something out of him, which would be great because you had high hopes of him coming into last year that he was going to be a contributor on this team. What Brad Holmes did, I think there's a new approach to Brad Holmes when it comes to the draft, and this is something we probably should have learned because he's done it in every draft. Patience and pounce. He was patient last night.
Mm-hmm.
Let it fall to you, let it fall to you, let it fall to you until it comes within range, and then pounce. And he did. And he got his guy. He was patient and then pounced when they got Jamison Williams, and patience and pounce when it came to other players in the draft and, moving up in draft capital to get other guys that he liked. That's what he does. Now, they have one pick going into today, but that could change. I don't know if it will, but it could. They could find a way to get more picks and trading back and getting more picks, or maybe trading a player and getting more picks. But the one pick they had last night, to me, it's a grand slam. They got the best player at the position, the most need, and he's a guy. I mean, there's no question he's a guy.
So we predicted last week here on the program that they would trade up, and one of the reasons why was because I do believe they believe in best player available. And if you sit there at 29, that best player available, you're at the mercy of how the board falls. you control your own destiny if you decide you want to trade up and get the best player available. So you didn't want a linebacker or a quarterback to be the best player available, and they turned out they wouldn't have been, but, especially a quarterback. But at 29, rather than just sitting there and going BPA, they were able to maneuver and go BPA and get a player that is useful. It was a rare marriage, but they weren't going to leave it up to fate. They were going to control their own destiny.
And I suppose that those people, was it a 0.6% that don't like it?
Yeah, hate it.
Hate it?
Yeah, 2% total don't like it and hate it combined.
Right. So out of those 2% of the people, maybe I was a little quick to just chastise them, but maybe the reasoning is because they don't see much of a difference between, say, Terion Arnold and Cooper DeJean, and if you had stayed at 29 and not given up the third-round pick, you could still get Cooper DeJean.
If Cooper DeJean was your favorite player in this draft, you wouldn't love this move.
That would be it.
If Kool-Aid McKinstry was a player you liked more than Terion Arnold, you wouldn't like this move. If you really wanted, and Kang, I want to bring you in, Johnny Newton, but you still like the move, you wanted Johnny Newton bad for a variety of reasons, and hell, he's still on the board. I can't imagine being there 29 picks into the second round, but Kang, your overall thoughts on the move?
I love it. I mean, Johnny Newton, I still love Johnny Newton. I like Johnny Newton at 29. I never expected Terion Arnold to be in the 20s, to be honest with you. So with knowing what we know now, Gator, you're correct. What Brad Holmes did was he waited until he saw an opening, and then he jumped on that opening. Like, it was a wait and see. Everyone knew, by all accounts, this was going to be an offensive-heavy draft. So he waits till all these offensive players go, right? And then the defensive players start kind of trickling in a little bit, and then you see where they're going. You see how this draft is going, and you wait. All right, is it 16? Is it 17? Is it 20? Brad Holmes saw the opening and went for it. I love the move. I love the pick. I don't think it's too much to give up because if you're going by draft value chart, guys, he might have slightly overpaid, but that's for the pick at 24. If you believe Terion Arnold's a top 15 player, then you didn't overpay. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, you basically traded up to, say, 15.
Exactly.
That's the way I look at it.
So, and the thing about this is, like any degree of disappointment, and I have a slight degree of disappointment. It has nothing to do with the trade or the player. It has everything to do with, I like watching Brad Cook in rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now they don't have a third rounder, and they don't have a fourth rounder, so I don't get to see what I think is some of his true strengths. But then again, he determined that this player is worth it, and so my faith in him overrides the disappointment of getting to watch him cook. Now, these middle round picks, you can't do this every year, given what's happened with contracts, because you need affordable alternatives to your star players, and they're obviously having to pay their star players. So, I don't envision them doing this every year, but they saw the opportunity, they pounced. They're trying to win a Super Bowl, and they think this player is going to help him. Selfishly, sure, it's fun having 2, 3 picks on this day. And now they only have the one pick as it stands right now, but that's the price of being a good team, I guess, because there's not nearly as many holes to fill, and who knows? They may crush it in rounds 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, or they may add picks today.
They could. All right, 248-539-9797 if you want to get into love it, like it, don't like it, or hate it. We also have to talk about what's still on the board today. They are 29 picks away, and we came up with a list of attractive picks that probably goes about 12, 13 players deep. So there is a chance that one of these guys could still be on the board for the Lions a little bit later on. And, oh, by the way, Amon-Ra St. Brown joins us at noon today.
Oh.
Yes, we will hear from Amon-Ra St. Brown as he will join us here on Carson Anderson, talk about his thoughts on Detroit, the draft, the contract, the other contracts that have been signed and not signed yet, all that coming up a little bit later on here on Carson Anderson on 97.1 The Ticket. 248-539-9797. Ticket text to that same number, so get your thoughts in. And we will get to your feedback here on the selection of Terion Arnold. Wow, never thought we'd be saying that a day later. Pretty incredible.
Yeah, I still can't believe that's who they ended up with, and that the cost was a third-round pick. And I mean, that's what happens when he goes at 24. I mean, I was 1 foot out the door here, really, last night. I was getting ready to walk towards the exit, and then somebody grabs me and says, the Lions just made a trade. I'm like, what? and then turn around and look at the TVs, and sure enough, there it is. What an exciting moment. And for the crowd out there, they're waiting all night long, and they want to see the pick at 29, and then to hear that there's a trade, everyone gets excited, and you start wondering, ooh, wait a minute, who is it? And I think most people thought they're getting Terion Arnold. Are they getting Terion Arnold? And then you start to convince yourself otherwise, and go, wait a minute, what's the pick? Who's it going to be that's going to disappoint me? Well, there was no disappointment.
We were counting down the number of attractive defensive players and how many picks away the Lions were. At one point there were 5 defensive players on the board that were like, wow, all these guys are available, and the Lions were 10 picks away. And then you start seeing them start to go. Dallas Turner goes off the board. Jared Verse goes off the board. Chop Robinson, Quinyon Mitchell. And as that list gets smaller and smaller, then you see that's when Brad made his move, got his guy. 248-539-9797. It's Carson Anderson from our draft headquarters at Buffalo Wild Wings at the Stoley Stage. 97-1 the ticket.
Live from Buffalo Wild Wings downtown Detroit.
Draft Week 2024.
Karsh and Anderson, brought to you by Sarah Chevrolet.
All right, we'll get into what we want to have happen today for the Detroit Lions. The list of available players is actually surprisingly long that would be attractive to Detroit, so we will get to that today at 11 o'clock here on 97.1 The Ticket. 248-539-9797, phone calls, feedback. Let's get to the feedback. The crowd looked like Woodstock. The air smelled like Woodstock.
I tell you, man, this is not just Detroit. If you've traveled anywhere in the last couple of years, whether it's Vegas or New York or South Beach or wherever you're going, everything kind of smells the same outside.
Yep. Eric writes in, my wife and I went down there early yesterday. A few tips for people. Go early between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. at the latest. We parked on Woodward just a few blocks up from LCA using the Park Detroit app. Easy access to get in and out after the event. The city and the NFL did a great job. Unnamed texter, 96 East looked jam-packed in Livonia right about 5 p.m. Another unnamed texter, not only did you get Terion Arnold, you kept him away from Green Bay, worth every bit of that third-round pick.
Yeah.
Mike and Dexter says, it's interesting that no one is looking at this as Dallas trading down. They got who they wanted and got our third-round pick.
Oh, there's no question. Dallas did what was best for Dallas, but who
so
cares? What the Lions did what was best for the Lions.
Yeah.
What, am I worried that the Cowboys got the offensive tackle they were hoping to get?
We'll do that breakdown. We'll do that breakdown right around 1 o'clock today here on 97.1 The Ticket. I do want to talk about that. Let's do Dallas's draft in depth
about
today.
110?
110? Sounds good. Let's do it at 110. From an unnamed texter, didn't make it to the actual NFL draft area, but was at Ford Field and the surrounding area. And wow, the city looked great and everyone was well behaved. Cherry on top was the trade up. Way to go, D. Another unnamed texter. In the moment, I wanted Cooper DeJean, but I also wanted Michael Mayer over Sam Laporta. Trust Holmes. This kid's probably going to be great. Stan and Warren, I love the Arnold pick, so more so because it's a counter to what the Bears did in stocking up their offense. It's the perfect response to keep pace with the division rival. That's from Stan and Warren.
Well, it filled a glaring need for the Lions. I mean, I don't know if he's going to start day one being CB1, but my expectation of Terion Arnold is that he will be CB1 at some point this year. I mean, maybe that's too lofty of an expectation, but I don't care. That's what my expectation is.
I just, it's funny. We can get into the debate of how good or bad he's going to be, and there really, there's degrees of probability based on work ethic. You don't get drafted by Detroit unless you've got character and football character. Like, they want you to raise money to build an orphanage at the church, but make sure that the orphanage has a weight room. Like, that's the kind of thing that the needle they're trying to thread, and it sounds like this is one of those guys. And when you have that, you tend to get more out of your ability. So the physical ability seems to be there, so the probability of him being a good player is high. But what matters is, are you better? I don't think there's any question that this defense is better.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And, of course, the one mantra through it all is, for every player, please stay healthy.
Yep, as always.
Keep the learning curve going in the right direction. Stay healthy.
Mark and Clausen says, good morning, gentlemen. What makes this even better to me is that I believe Arnold would have been the pick of Green Bay at 25, and Holmes moved ahead of them, knowing that. Once again, and Brad, we trust, love the show. Marlon Wall Lake says, I jumped like a kid on Christmas, getting his favorite toy when we got Arnold. Never thought he would be there, and the Lions got him. I'm thrilled. If we can somehow get Jackson Powers-Johnson in the second round, I will erupt. Let's go.
Wow.
All right, well, Marlon and Walled Lake, we will talk about the second round coming up a little bit later on. I do have a question. I'm asking for a friend, okay? And this is for everyone who was there yesterday. And I am asking for a friend. Did anyone see a stroller last night at the draft? I'm asking for a friend who might want to bring his two daughters down here, including one in a stroller. I'm asking for a friend. Did anyone see a stroller at the
Your
draft?
friend sounds responsible. Your friend sounds like he is a really good dad.
Your friend sounds like a possible future coach of the Watermelon Sharks. Possible. Kang, you want to bring the girls down here?
I do.
You want to know if it's family friendly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the event looked fantastic last night, but with that comes a lot of people, and I get that, and so I'm curious is this something I know they talk about it being family, targeted at certain events and areas. I didn't see it though, in the chaos last night. Maybe that's what they wanted to show us, but I was asking you, and I was asking people. Anyone see a stroller? Because I got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they're not going to walk the entire time. No. They're just not going to.
No.
And it's just going to be one of those umbrella strollers that you could fold up. So it's nothing crazy, but I didn't see one.
Are you if you're planning on bringing them down, at what time are you thinking of coming down? Like, is this going to be
this afternoon before the draft starts?
So not for the draft itself, but just to come on downtown. I think you're fine.
I think you probably will be as well. I mean, the one thing.
I think you're very responsible.
You've heard the discussion of the aroma that was in the air. That's something that 3 and 5.
That's not Slow's barbecue.
No,
that was not. A different sweet smell.
Yeah. So if anybody can share how family friendly the event was, but now that you mentioned that you're thinking of coming down this afternoon, kind of before, because tonight's Friday night, right? Things could get a little more raucous. Today's a school day, so there might have been some people last night that weren't going to get quite as carried. There were definitely some that got carried away. Tonight, the percentage of the crowd that's down here, the crowd that might get carried away, that percentage might be a little bit higher.
All right, so driving down here, I heard somebody call in the morning show and said, "May it peaked a little early."
Oh, yeah.
So we got down there at noon, and, we're checking things out, and, the next thing you know, it's 3 o'clock, and I'm like, oh, boy. Yeah, I think there were a lot of people that may have peaked a little early yesterday.
And that's the one thing about the mob, okay, which looks phenomenal on TV.
It does.
But to get in there, you had to get in pretty early. And if you got here early, you perhaps had a drink or two early. Now you're in the middle of that mob, and after a few drinks, it's like, okay, I have to relieve some of the pressure. I don't know how good or bad that would be a nightmare situation. Like, I don't know that I'd want to be in that mob.
Because that's just standing room, right? There's no seats there, at least not for the mob. I mean, I think there's seats in the front.
Heaven forbid you have to do a sit down.
No. What I'm saying is that you can't save your seat for somebody. Like if you and I go down there together and we're in the mob, and you're like, Gator, I gotta go
see
a man about a horse, and like, okay, all right, I can't hold your spot.
No.
So.
No,
you snooze, you lose.
That's a tough deal when you're in the middle of a crowd like that. And one of the things that might prevent me from being in said crowd, periphery, close to the always clean and certainly comfortable porta-johns.
Yes, of course. Well, we talked a little bit about that last night, and Mike Valenti was talking about Times Square in New York on New Year's Eve, and I've always wondered the same thing. Like, how do these people do it?
Yeah.
And I think what was the common thought? Diaper,
yeah. Feedback coming in. If A.D. Mitchell is available at 47, do we offer Hendon Hooker to the Giants and draft him? That's from Gabe.
Nope.
I'm not an A.D. Mitchell fan, so you're asking the wrong guy. But
and I'm a Hendon Hooker fan, so you're asking the wrong guy.
Hans, the Uber driver, says, when you notice Wiggins wasn't taken until 30, even Green Bay passed on DeJean. I have a hard time believing Arnold wouldn't have been there at 29.
Yeah, I don't know if I buy that. I think the thing is that think about how people draft. Brad Holmes goes with his best player, right? Mm-hmm. So if the Packers had a big gap between Terion Arnold and Cooper DeJean, and not such a big gap between Terion Arnold and the offensive lineman that they took, I mean, you do with what you got on your board. And they do have a screaming need on the offensive line. So they address that. And I would imagine the Packer fans are probably not happy about that because it's not a sexy pick to bolster the offensive line, particularly when you have maybe the best corner available to you, the pick in front, and it's your division rival that snatched him up.
He might have been there. It would have been one of the more shocking developments, but this is based upon mock drafts. And the one thing I want to make clear here is just because a guy is available at 29 doesn't mean that everybody else had him as a low-rated player. It just means that when they were on the clock, they had a player they liked more.
Well, and things shift because once players start going in a different direction, it changes. I mean, raise your hand if you thought that there were going to be 14 straight offensive players taken.
It was more than that, wasn't it?
I forget what the number was.
I thought it was 16 straight that went off the board. No, it was 14. You're right. My bad. Yeah, the first defensive player to go, Leatu Latu, the edge rusher from UCLA. 248-539-9797. Oh, looky here. 11:05. Fresh Mel.
Oh.
We got some fresh Mel. Second rounder. Who's on the board for the Lions? We'll take a look at 11:05 here on Carson Anderson from our draft headquarters in downtown Detroit. 97-1 the ticket.
to you by Sarah Chevrolet.
City a little sleepy this morning as we made our way down here following last night's festivities, the draft ending close to midnight. The first round of the draft ending close to midnight. It resumes tonight at 7 o'clock. And, of course, get to here early if you want to get in. Detroit set a record. We set the bar for the most people on the first day of the draft. And it is expected, well, we have a chance to break the record for day 2 and day 3. But right now, as it stands, Scott Anderson, good day 1. Good day 1.
Great day 1. Loved everything about it. You know, the day itself was beautiful. The sun was out. Maybe not as warm as you'd like, but it was warm enough. The crowd was electric. The city looked fantastic. The way that the footprint looked on TV was amazing. The crowds here, where we're at Buffalo Wild Wings, the crowd was great. Everybody friendly, happy. It was awesome. And today, I mean, for a while, it's going to be even better because the temperatures are going to be warmer.
Yep.
It's just going to be beautiful. And
Friday.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Friday, which helps too.
I think last night was a bit of an S show in a good way. Tonight, I think, could be more of an S show, and I'm not sure in a good way.
Well,
but on Friday, it was a beautiful S show last night.
Right. I think another issue tonight is it's supposed to rain. Rain could come in around 11 o'clock. So maybe towards the end of the draft for tonight, but rain could be coming in, and tomorrow it's supposed to be windy AF.
All right, so here's some of the feedback.
40-mile-an-hour winds.
Wow. Here's some of the feedback that's come in. It's not a stroller type event. Don't do it. That's from an unnamed texter.
Oh.
Next text. Yes, there were strollers there. Everyone was accommodating. Just a friendly vibe in the whole place. Maybe due to legal marijuana, but whatever. Next text, Joe in Lincoln Park. I heard the corner ballpark is the place to go with kids. Kang, is that something you would consider with the girls? Corner ballpark?
I would consider anything kid-friendly, so yes.
Well, that's a ways off the footprint, but yeah.
Unnamed texter, a stroller is perfect because everybody moves out of your way when you walk through a crowd with a stroller.
Everybody?
Interesting.
Yeah, not everybody.
Yeah.
not everybody.
Do you have to have a kid in the stroller or just a stroller itself?
Oh, good God. If you're walking a stroller without a kid, you got problems.
Yeah.
What if they're pushing me?
I've seen that.
Yeah, that's...
I was at your birthday party that one year.
Keep the genie in the bottle, my friend.
I was there that night.
Dad's having a rough night, girls.
May not have been Kang, but saw somebody who he called wheelchair to this day.
And then there's nothing wrong with his legs either.
They're just not functioning right now.
What do we got next? Yes, by the fan experience, but not by the draft theater. Fan experience.
That's what I gather.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Stay away from the draft theater.
Yep. I was down for about 6 hours last night and saw countless strollers. No trouble navigating within the perimeter, but some of the sidewalks leading into the area require a little bit of extra attention with a stroller.
Well, keep this in mind, too. That most of the, I don't know if it's most of the people, but at least half the people, I guess, are going to be within the NFL footprint. So, King, if your intention is not to enter that footprint and just be on the periphery, I think you'd be able to maneuver just fine.
I want to go in the footprint, though.
Well,
you can't always get what you want, but
is that a song?
You find sometimes you get what you need. Unnamed texter, seriously, Bo, there were 270,000 people down there. Keep your kids at home, maybe a sitter.
Well,
the point is, I want
at night. You're going to go in the afternoon before the draft. I think that's a good call.
Yeah, and I want my 5-year-old is she wants to see it, so that's the point too. Otherwise, yeah, I'd go by myself easy.
Ray in Sterling Heights says, I saw a few strollers, but we were down there at 11 a.m. yesterday. Lots of lines, great crowd, had a blast. Nick in Port Huron, there were tons of strollers, but I do not recommend going into the crowd by the stage once round 2 starts. People were jerks to parents with kids down there trying to get through. Unnamed texter, didn't see a stroller, but I saw a couple pulling a wagon, and everyone was courteous to them.
Oh, the wagon.
Yes, multiple strollers and wagons with kids. In fact, at the draft stage area in the way back, closer to the ESPN studio, sent strollers watching in that area, and there was a separate line to go through security if you had no way to get in.
Is the wagon more of a photo op than it is really a method of transportation.
No, wagon is useful.
Is it?
Yeah.
For long haul, or is it just like useful if you're going?
No,
short?
I came to really appreciate and like the wagon back in the day.
King, do you have a wagon?
No, the wagon. Yeah, I do have a wagon. It is useful for, you could put a lot of stuff in there, snacks. If a kid falls asleep, 2 kids can fall asleep. It's definitely useful. I just don't know if it's, inconvenient for other people.
One more. Saw one stroller. No, don't take your kids. Didn't see many kids under 6 or 7. So you've got a variety of feedback there, and I'm not sure it helped because you heard both in good bad,
exactly.
good and bad things.
I think if people realize that Kang's going earlier than later, like you're going to clear out of there by 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at worst.
Yeah, that's the goal.
I think you should be fine.
All right, so right now
you got my endorsement, Kang, and that should mean a lot when it comes to the children.
Well, I do know.
Yeah, because you're not going to be there.
Yeah,
so you don't care, right?
For years
I
and
care
years
about you and your kids.
For years and years and years, I spent a lot of time asking Gator for his opinion on parenting.
Well, listen, if I approve it, I mean, I'm the one you guys are worried about because you guys think I hate kids.
Well, I wouldn't say we think.
No, we know you hate kids.
I wouldn't say we think you hate kids. Here's feedback coming in regarding our Twitter poll. Love it, like it, don't like it, hate it. 73.9% love what the Lions did yesterday. 24.2 like it. 1.3 don't like it. 0.6 hate it. The Red Ranger writes in, if you don't love it, you don't know ball. From Mark, I like it a lot. Just bummed they essentially only have 1.5 picks left in the draft. Can't count on 6th and 7th round guys to make the roster. Still need edge, wide receiver, and O-line. Will need to scour camp for some cap casualties.
Yeah, I've never been as sold as they need the edge. I mean, if there was that guy that was there, go get him. With Jared Verse, who was talking that yesterday, I'm like, go get him if you can. But I'm hoping that James Houston and Marcus Davenport will fill that void as much as they can. But the text is right. Scour the waiver wire. Things are going to happen. You can still make trades at some point. And there's still free agents available, too.
From 4T1463, I love it, but there's that voice saying, would he fall to 29? Holmes knew what he wanted and got it. Love the kid. KC in Detroit says, in Brad, we trust. Matt writes in, I like the pick, but they almost have to trade back out of the 2nd for a 3rd and a 4th or something like that now. I like Brad cooking in the draft, but he needs some picks to cook. That's kind of the downside. And I don't mean you don't make the trade, but it doesn't come without a cost. Like that cost is taking away from what I feel, Gator, is one of the great strengths of our GM, and that's finding gems in rounds other than the first.
Well, it is a great strength of him. You know what? Because it's been a strength in the 3 drafts he's had prior to last night, they built up that depth. Now's the time to go ahead and pounce on the high-end talent, which is what he did last night. There's not a whole lot of room to make this roster at this point, right?
Yeah.
So anybody you're getting at this from tonight on are really depth pieces. I don't. You've looked at it before and like, wow, all 7 rounds of players made the team. Wow, all 7 rounds of players made the team again. Wow, all 7 rounds of players made the team again. This isn't going to be the case this year.
No. Tony writes in, trading up is almost always bad. If Arnold is awesome, great, but chances are that he's fine. But with a lot of good players being available with the picks they gave away and the pick they had originally. So, Tony, yep. But the one good thing is that the Lions' needs are so much fewer than they've been in the past that I'm big on depth, and I'm huge on crushing it in the middle rounds to afford your high-end players. I kind of think their days of trading up might have ended yesterday, and there might be more of a trade back and get depth because – like the guy who said they still need, what did he say? They still need offensive tackle.
Offensive lineman and wide receiver.
He didn't even say defensive tackle. And I do feel like that could be a necessity. Now, deep down, they may believe Broderick Martin is going to be the solution if they lose Aleem McNeil.
Well, I mean, what do they have at defensive tackle? They have Broderick Martin. They have Aleem McNeil. They have John Kaminsky. They have Josh Paschal. They've got a lot on the defensive line. They got a lot invested on the defensive line, and they got versatile players that aren't just locked into being, oh, here's this 300-pound guy that you can't move. He's got to play in the middle. They like to have the versatility of players that play inside and outside. I think they've done a really nice job of adding depth, and they'll continue to do so. Look, when we get into the players available, there are a bunch of players available to them by the end of this second round. I'm curious to see what the position run is going to be early in the second round. Is it going to be offensive side? Is it going to be defensive side? It looks like maybe you could see a couple of wide receivers come off the board early because of the trades that were made. But once that's done, are we going to see a run on defensive players?
Yeah, I think there's about 13, 14 guys. Let's get to that list. Who do the Lions get in round 2? We'll start running it down at 11:02. We got some fresh mail we'll get to as well. It's Carson Anderson from our draft headquarters in downtown Detroit from the Stoley stage at Buffalo Wild Wings here on 97.1 The Ticket.
And Anderson, brought to you by Sarah Chevrolet.
On 97.1, The Ticket.
We're running on fumes down here. Yesterday, a 16-hour Animal Day marathon at Buffalo Wild Wings. Station did appreciate all the support help from the people here at B-Dubs, our sponsors, the engineers, promotion staff, and, of course, met with a lot of listeners. That was fun for people who were able to make it in here to B-Dubs and got out in the streets there a little bit. So do appreciate all the support we have here. And what a day for Detroit. Now, today could be just as special. I wanted to get to the Mel Mock, and I promised it, but I think we need to run down all of the players. I'm gonna give you guys, Kang, you and Gator, and we'll kind of talk about each player that might be available and how excited we would be, because I don't suspect very many will get to 61, but I suspect one or two will, because this list is kind of deep of players that could help Detroit that are still out there. They're 29 picks away. We'll start with defensive tackle Terion Newton. He might be the most attractive player left on the board and at a position of need. Good player. A lot of people thought he was a first-rounder. I think circumstance kept him out of the first round, but he seems to me like a player that could really help Detroit, Scott.
He would, but I expect him to go pretty early. I know one of the ESPN analysts has him as the second-best player available on day 2. So I wouldn't expect him to be around, but absolutely, this is a guy we talked about yesterday in the first round. Would you want him at 29? And there's plenty of reason to want him at 29. And, you know, if you're looking already ahead, unfortunately, one of the problems of having a really good team with really good players is that you have tough decisions to make. If you can't bring a Lee McNeil back, you're going to have to start thinking about a replacement, because Lee McNeil is likely to command a salary in excess of $20 million a season after this year. You got to start thinking about replacing him.
Kang, I want to bring this up to you specifically, because this was your guy yesterday. If this draft starts unfolding and we get through the 30s and Terion Newton hasn't been taken, and we get through the 40s and he's not been taken, and we're in the early 50s, do you consider going all in and saying, F it, we're going to get our second guy, this second guy that can help us defensively, and give up more picks and just say top heavy, we're going for it now. These are two players that we think can play for us, make plays next year, and start for us. Would you consider a trade up and give up even more draft capital?
Doug, I'm willing to give up the rest of the draft to go up and get him in the 30s. I'm not kidding. So if he were there at 61 or whatever, of course, I don't even screw the NFL rules on waiting, just get the pick in. But he's not going to be there. And, Gator mentioned it, that he's one of the most highly, if not the most rated player left that hasn't been picked. So I expect him to go in the 30s. I would definitely think about strongly giving up the rest of my draft to go get him, because I think he is, if you use a 3-man rotation, he's a day one type guy. He's a disruptor. I think that highly of him. And even if you bring back a Lee McNeil, DJ Reader is on a 2-year deal. He's a vet. And if your future is a Lee McNeil and Johnny Newton, your future is really good.
Okay, Braden Fisk out of Florida State is probably the next defensive tackle that is still available. I'm more likely, I would think that he'd be on the board at 61, although I also still think more likely than Terion Newton, but also unlikely.
I would tend to agree with you. Probably unlikely, just because there weren't that many defensive players that went last night. I wanted to ask you, Doug, specifically about a guy that you saw in a kind of comparison, because you saw Johnny Newton play a lot.
Yep.
Kind of compare and contrast that to Chris Jenkins.
Like Johnny Newton better. Chris Jenkins, good player. Good player.
Chris Jenkins from Michigan.
Chris Jenkins from Michigan, defensive tackle. He's not a high stat guy. He's kind of does the dirty work. I think between Newton and Fisk, maybe a little bit more ability to get home to the quarterback. But if Chris Jenkins is the pick at 42, or excuse me, at 61, that's not particularly disappointing.
Okay, and then I guess with the 3 defensive tackles Michigan had, the other 2 coming back with Grant and Graham.
Yep.
Where does Jenkins rate with those in that trio?
3rd.
Okay.
Yep.
So those guys both higher end.
I would say so, yeah. Another couple names to watch at that position, Mason Smith at LSU. Tavondre Sweat, if you really got to do your homework, this is a guy that an awful decision, a driving while intoxicated charge 2 weeks ago. Terrible timing for a player that some thought might go in the first round. All right, still on the board. Zach Frazier, West Virginia, interior offensive line. I don't know that I could think of a player that the Lions would want more than him. Again, is there a chance he makes it to 61? Seems unlikely, but he's still out there.
Well, he and Jackson Powers-Johnson.
Yeah.
Both of those guys, interior offensive linemen, is one more of a center than the other one. I mean, the versatility, again, is something that the Lions covet. And it's just adding to that pool of players. You want a mauler, you want a guy who's going to fight for it. I have no issue if they take an interior offensive lineman. And kind of hoping that one of those guys is there for him at 61, but it doesn't seem likely, but you never know.
Throwing Cooper Beebe, Kang, the interior offensive lineman, Frazier, Jackson Powers, Johnson, Cooper Beebe. Could one of them be there at 61, and do you think they would jump?
I would love any of those guys. For me, it's Johnny Newton, and there's a huge gap between the next DT and him. So if Johnny Newton's not available, I go right to the interior offensive line, and any of those guys would be a dream for me.
Some depth there, so it's possible that one of them could be on the board. Edge rushers, 2 guys, I think at 61 make a ton of sense. Marshawn Neeland out of Western Michigan, Chris Braswell out of Alabama. Neeland would be really a cool story, but also, I think he could be a guy that secretly could really just come in here and make an impact next year.
Yeah, and Braswell's a guy, wasn't he hurt a couple years ago? And then kind of came back, and he had really high hopes for him as a player, but kind of eased his way back and started playing better as the year went on. I tend to subscribe to the theory you can't go wrong with Alabama players early in the draft.
Next up, the wide receiver position. A lot of players here. Keon Coleman, Adonai Mitchell, Lab McConkey, and Jalen Polk.
Well, a couple of those guys I think are going to be off the board right away with the first 2 picks in the draft. We have Buffalo, and Buffalo passed on a number of receivers. They traded back twice. I love what Buffalo did.
Yeah.
To trade back a second time, just getting more draft capital, and you could end up still getting. I imagine that the reason they did it is because they're like, wait a minute, we can trade back and still get like Keon Coleman. Beautiful for them. And I forget who's got the second pick of the round, but it looks like that's another receiver possibility. But there's still lots of really good receivers out there. You mentioned Polk, McMillan, his teammate as well from Washington. You got Roman Wilson from Michigan. There's a bunch of receivers that are still out there that you look at. If you want to take one in the second round, maybe you can. Maybe I don't know if you want to roll the dice and wait till the 5th round. Is that the next pick the Lions have?
Yeah.
So unless they're able to acquire some more draft capital, guys like Malachi Corley, they're probably not going to be available to him.
Second pick, by the way, goes to the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
The safety spot, Javon Bullard, Tyler. Oh, Kang, your thoughts on the wide receivers? Any of those guys get to 61? Are you jumping?
I think they could because, and I would jump because as much as of an offensive, round 1 heavy it was, I think round 2 could be defensive heavy because of all the great players that are left and no one took a defensive player. So I think one of those receivers could slip to the Lions, and they have a need there with Josh Reynolds being gone.
Okay, let's get to the safety spot. Javon Bullard out of Georgia, Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. Either of those players, and I like Bullard better than Nubin, but either of those players, that's kind of a secret need of the Lions. It's down the list, but I would like to see them get another safety.
Yeah, another one that consideration, Cole Bishop from Utah is highly rated as well. Safety is a position that they need to upgrade, but I think they can do that through free agency. There's still some guys that are there. Quandre Diggs, former Detroit Lion, still there. And Jamal Adams, I think, is still available as well. So I'd rather them go that route, get a guy on a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal for cheap, and get them there.
And then, Gator, this is one of your favorites. He's still on the board, the offensive tackle from BYU, Kingsley Suamataia. He could, he's Penei Sewell's cousin, right?
Exactly. Yeah, he's still there, a tackle, and, the Lions will have a need to replace a tackle, I would imagine, soon. I mean, that's another one of these tough decisions, what happens with Taylor Decker. Taylor Decker, if he's going to stay with the Lions, they can't pay him like a starting left tackle in the league. They just can't afford to do that after they've paid Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown and likely to pay Jared Goff and others here. So I think you have to start thinking about it, and that's a guy I really like.
So that's a list. I think that's 14 names, and we went over a few more than that. So, the Lions 29 picks away. Can they get a guy that you covet? Well, believe it or not, Gator, of all the names we just mentioned, there are a couple of them that are on the board for the Lions in Mel's mock.
Oh,
for the second round.
I like it.
We'll get to that coming up. Did I get word? Are we moving? We're moving Amon-Ra. Amon-Ra's got to go a little bit earlier, so we're going to have. Go ahead, Kang.
He's going to be closer to around 11:20, 11:25.
Okay. Well, we will.
Stay tuned, people. You want him.
We will catch up to the Sun God. The Lions wanted him, and they got him. Catch up to the Sun God coming up. It's Carson Anderson from our draft headquarters at Buffalo Wild Wings downtown, backstage at the draft here on 97.1 The Ticket.
.24
Karsh and Anderson, brought to you by Sarah Chevrolet.
Amon-Ra St. Brown will join us momentarily here on 97.1 The Ticket from the draft. The Detroit Lions on the clock took Terion Arnold after moving up and getting Dallas's pick at 24, get one of the better corners available in this year's draft. What an aggressive move, and what a great night for Detroit. I don't know that it was a great night for the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, I mean, it was an interesting pick, to say the least, when they selected Michael Penix, the quarterback out of Washington, when they just signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year, $180 million deal in free agency with $100 million guaranteed. But if you think about it, the more I thought about this last night, if they expect to be a good football team for the next couple of years with Kirk Cousins, why not get your quarterback now? Because you're not going to be in a position to draft one in a couple of years when you move on from Kirk Cousins, because I would imagine the team's pretty good, or at least middle of the pack. And, you can't get top quarterbacks. Well, you can, but, I mean, the top quarterbacks are going to go, obviously, in the top 10, not in the middle of the draft. So they identified their guy. I think you and I both really like Michael Penix and appreciate his talent. The only question is, injury stuff. But I sort of understand it. And I know people are scratching their heads going, well, wait a minute. If they have a chance to win right now, why not go get a player right now? And that people were speculating they would have gone with an offensive player. And I was thinking, well, they do have a lot of offensive talent already. So what they've done is locked up the quarterback position for years to come. And other teams do it. The Packers did that.
I mean, I guess
Jordan Love stepped in, did a great job.
Packers were more close to winning, and were winning at a higher level than Atlanta.
Sure.
And, Kirk Cousins said something when he signed there. It wasn't about the money. It was what the money meant, and a commitment to him. They also had him hyping up the crowd. I was reported that he had him hyping up the crowd at a draft event for the Falcons, only to find out that they drafted a player at his position moments later that he didn't know was coming.
Well, the report I heard last night was that they called him before they made the selection, like right before they made the selection, said, hey, want to give you a heads up, we're selecting Michael Penix Jr. here. So, I mean, did it hit him out of left field? I'm sure it probably felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying I agree with the logic behind it. Or that I would have done it, but I understand the logic of why they did it.
I guess I really don't understand why they did it after making that kind of financial investment in a veteran that they're trying to win now. And if he's got a window and the window's closing for Kirk Cousins, help him in that window.
Keep in mind that first-round picks, it's a 5-year deal. So, they'll have some time to figure out what they have with him. In the meantime, you got Kirk Cousins, who's pretty good. Led the NFL before he got hurt with, percentage of touchdown passes. So he's.
But Penix is already 24, and so I guess I just wouldn't have done what they did. But we'll see how it plays itself out.
I wouldn't have done what they did either. But I'm saying,
but contracts,
I can understand the logic.
Contracts are interesting too as it pertains to Terion Arnold. Because if you take a look at the Lions secondary, Carlton Davis, 1 year left. Emmanuel Mosley signed a 1-year contract. Khalil Dorsey, Kendall Vilder, 1-year contracts. Amik Robertson's on a 2-year deal. Brian Branch, 3-year deal, depending on where he plays. But at that corner spot, now they got a guy on a 5-year deal. So the player they took yesterday could be short-term solution, but certainly is thought of as a long-term solution at the cornerback spot.
Yeah, I just love what they did. The patience and pounce approach that Brad Holmes employed last night was brilliant. We kind of joked right before we got done with our segment because, hey, the Cowboys are on the clock, and, is Jerry going to make them, can Jerry trade? And I jokingly said, I don't know, Lions have Roy Williams to offer up again.
Right.
And, no, they didn't have to offer Roy Williams to get a first-round pick. They had to offer their first-round pick and a third-round pick. Okay. And they got the guy. They got the guy that I was stunned to see. I mean, by most people's accounts, when you look at people that are ranking the players and doing all the analysis on these guys, Terion Arnold was either number 1 or number 2 in terms of cornerbacks available in the draft. And they got him. And we talked about Quinyon Mitchell, and we hardly mentioned Terion Arnold because we just didn't think he was even a possibility.
No, and as his name was moving down the board, and quite frankly, so was Quinyon Mitchell.
Yeah.
There was sort of what is going on? Whenever there is, I hate using the term fall when a player falls, but when reality sets in and a player is available later than you expected him to be, you start to wonder, can it benefit my team and my organization? And the answer for the Lions was yes, it could benefit them. as all those offensive players going off the board. Had we known going into the draft, it would have been 14 straight offensive picks, a record to open up the draft. And how that impacted the Lions, well, it directly impacted them and them walking away with one of the better defensive players available. Great set of circumstances for the Detroit Lions as they get set to make a push for the Super Bowl.
Listen, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and we have so seldom seen luck happen when it comes to drafts, right?
Yep.
With the Red Wings, we never see it.
Ever. They've had the worst luck of any team in lotteries since they've been in the lottery over the last 8 years.
Pistons obviously missed out on Wembanyama last year despite being the worst team in the league. And then this year they have another shot to get the top pick in the draft, and it might be the worst draft that they've seen in years.
This is the one they'll win.
Right, exactly. But the Lions, they make their own luck in some ways. And the cost of a third-round pick, I'm all on board with it. I don't care that they don't have a third-round pick anymore. If you said going into the draft last night, yeah, for the Lions to land Terion Arnold, it's going to cost them a third-round pick. If I told you that, you'd be all about it, wouldn't you?
Yes. Yep. And look, if this kid, and we've said it a couple times, if he is slightly above average, it's an improvement in the secondary for the Lions. So we can talk about what he might be, and there's no guarantees. And everybody who made a pick in the first round thinks they got a good player, and not everybody is right. So it's no given that he's going to be at minimum slightly above average, but they talked at great length about his ceiling and his floor, and they think he has a high floor. And that if it doesn't pan out, but they go after people and football guys, so you feel like you're going to get the most out of his ability.
Well, they go for matchups too, because they want somebody that's going to match up with what they do defensively, and that's what he does. The Lions like to run a lot of man-to-man coverage, and he's a stud in man-to-man coverage.
Well, and then the other thing is, the last year, it looked like, who was having a decent year for a minute was Cam Sutton. And then when they got in the latter portion of the schedule and started playing better wide receivers, didn't quite look as good. And so they addressed something that they're going to have to deal with in this division.
Oh, this division has some really, really good receivers, and it got better last night with Rome Odunze going to the Bears.
Yeah, well.
And not to mention what the Bears did in the offseason with Keenan Allen.
And we know that all the young receivers and talent in Green Bay, Justin Jefferson in Minnesota.
Jordan Addison.
Yeah, you're talking about a division where you want to have the antidote to all of that, and the Lions help themselves in that regard. Better in the secondary after last night. We wait to see what they're going to do tonight.
Well, and teams in the North are still trying to figure out how to cover Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Well, that is true, and he will join us shortly here on 97.1 The Ticket. So we continue from our draft headquarters at Buffalo Wild Wings. The Detroit Lions getting Terion Arnold in round one. They have the 29th pick of the second round and a bunch of names available that could help this team. And we will get to the Mel mock coming up a little bit later on. We were going to do it early, but we had to shift some things around. So that coming up shortly here on 97.1 The Ticket. In the meantime, we mentioned the division. Probably the only team like the Vikings at J.J. McCarthy, who goes into what is believed to be the best situation for a rookie quarterback. And they also get Dallas Turner. That's an impressive draft from Minnesota.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it was looking at doing my prep work last night for my personal mock draft, and the two screaming needs for the Vikings were quarterback and edge rusher. And they got the best edge rusher in the draft, and they got a quarterback that they apparently really, really like. And they had to maneuver a little bit to do so, but they got their guys. They have to be really happy with it.
Yep. And the Packers get a tackle in Jordan Morgan. We always talk about, sometimes you just do the blocking and tackling, meaning the fundamentals. I feel like that's a fundamental pick. Like, you need to get that guy. Not exciting. But
no, of course it's not exciting. And somebody who's a year removed from a pretty serious injury, and by some accounts say he's raw, but he's very talented. And, look, Packers would do what I would do there. I mean, I would build through the offensive line and make sure you protect your investments.
All right, let's bring in Amon-Ra St. Brown, who joins us now on 97.1 The Ticket. Recently signed, new contract with the Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra, thanks for being with us. Congratulations. And how does it feel to have your short and long-term future locked up with the Detroit Lions?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. It feels good. Something that I feel like I've been working towards for a long time, but I feel like it's just a reward. But my goal to be here my goal is to be here for much longer, win a lot more games, hopefully hoist up that Lombardi one day. That's the goal. But, it feels nice to be rewarded. I'm thankful for everyone that was a part of it, my coaches, my teammates, my agent, the Lions organization, my family, my brothers, everyone. So I'm just thankful.
You said something yesterday, and forgive me if I don't have the quote exactly right, but when you came out of college, Detroit wasn't really a place you wanted to be. Can you tell us the moment when you were here where you said, now, wait a sec, maybe this is the perfect spot for me?
Yeah. When I first got drafted, Detroit was one of the teams where it was like, I really don't want to go there, just because, they were a losing franchise for the most part. Didn't watch any Lions games growing up as a kid. They weren't really shown on TV where I was from. But once I got drafted here, came here, we had a rough start. We only won 3 games my first year, but I felt like, in the middle of that season, I was able to see the light, see the vision. Our record didn't show it, but I felt like we had a bunch of good guys in our locker room, our coaches. We had the right people, and then we just kept building. And going into that next off season, we had a good off season, had a good draft again, got some free agents. So we've just kept building and kept getting better, and a lot of the nucleus is still here. So we're building towards something great.
How did that first meeting go when you were introduced to Jared Goff, or you introduced yourself to Jared Goff? What was that like? Because, Jared has talked about how he really enjoys a familiarity and getting used to people, and once he gets that, it's golden. And you guys seem to hit it off pretty quickly.
Yeah, I remember when I first got drafted. I got the phone call, and then talked to Brad and everyone, hung up, and then celebrated with my family. And then he was like the first guy that texted me from the Lions that said, congratulations, you're going to be, enjoy the moment. You're going to be a big part of this offense. So he texted me like 20, 30 minutes after I got drafted. So I remember that. And then before I even got to Detroit, he actually flew a lot of the receivers out, tight ends, running backs, and we actually threw in California. So I got a chance to actually catch balls from him before I even got to Detroit, which was pretty cool for me to see, a quarterback that's a leader, taking his guys under his wing. It was his first year too, so he wanted to get used to his guys. So I remember that like it was yesterday, just being out there with guys that honestly I seen on TV, some that I didn't know. It was my first time being out there, and then ever since then, man, he's been awesome. He's been obviously a great quarterback, but just a great human being.
Getting to start your 4th year with the Lions in the National Football League, you've gotten better and better every year. It's fantastic to watch. Do you feel like a veteran now that can impart some wisdom on some of these younger players that come in?
Yeah, I feel like I can, definitely. It's only going to be my 4th year, so I haven't been in the league too long, but I feel like I've seen some things, kind of know how this whole business works. And, kids, or not kids, but some of the draft guys going into the draft asked me, a few days ago, any advice that I would give them. I told them, be ready to be disappointed. If you're not a top 10 pick, it's going to be a little different than you're expecting. You're going to be waiting a lot. If you go day 2, you got to wait a whole night. Day 3, it's 2 nights. So just be ready to be disappointed. But once you get that call, enjoy it. Enjoy the moment. Celebrate with your family. And once you get to wherever you go, just make sure it's grind time. You got to go. There's going to be no handouts in this league. You got to earn everything, and I always tell them at the end, like cream always rises to the top. The best player is always gonna come out.
We knew this was possible, you getting a long-term contract. Same thing with Penei Sewell, and we're all watching and hoping with Jared Goff. How much do you want him to sign that long-term deal and be the quarterback in Detroit for the duration of your career?
Yeah, I want it bad. I'm confident it'll get done here in the near future, but I want him to be here, for as long as I'm here. I think he's all I know, honestly. He's the only quarterback I've ever played with here in the league. He's missed a few games when I was playing, but not too many. So he's the quarterback that I came in with. We've built, I feel like this whole team, we've all built something special here. And I can't wait. I know it's going to get done. I just can't wait for it to get done and wish him, congratulate him. Because he deserves it, man.
Okay, yeah, it's funny because you've used the term confident and you know it's going to get done. Some of us here are getting antsy. I'm getting antsy, so that makes me feel a lot better that you feel that way about getting it, because Jared Goff has come to Detroit and won this city over, and really this group of Lions. When you saw Terion Arnold on the stage last night and say, "I'm home," That's how much it's changed from back when you got drafted. Now the Detroit Lions are the it team in the NFL. How's it to be a part of that?
It's awesome, to be a part of it. I was actually just thinking, I think that was yesterday when I saw him talking to the fans. Like, I can't imagine what it's like to be drafted now to the Detroit Lions. I feel like when I got drafted, it was a lot different than now. So I feel like now there's guys that want to get drafted to Detroit, which is even a better. I mean, once you hear the name called or Detroit calling you, I'm sure that call is much sweeter now than it was 3 years ago for guys. So I'm happy for him. I haven't seen too much of his tape, but I'm sure he's a great player. I can't wait for him, to get out here and get to work with us. But I was just thinking that the other day of how excited he probably was to get the call for it to be in Detroit, to be in front of I don't know how many thousands of fans that was. It was crazy.
I was just going to say, I mean, you get to play in front of 65,000 fans every Sunday here at Ford Field. Sometimes it's going to creep up to 90,000 fans depending where you play in the league. But last night you were up on the stage as this draft starts, and there are hundreds of thousands of fans that are here downtown Detroit. Can you talk about what it felt like to be up on stage in front of that many people that are going nuts for you because of what you and your teammates have accomplished this far?
Yeah, it was surreal. Just to be up there with, the commissioner, Eminem. Actually got a selfie with him. I thought that was pretty cool. Barry, Calvin, Jared, Aiden. Honestly, I felt like I was an artist, like Travis Scott, I was like Coachella, looking at thousands of people. I couldn't even see down. It was so crazy. But I felt like I literally was like an artist about to perform, have a concert. That's what it felt like on stage, because there were just so many people, so deep. I mean, you can't even see. I felt like I could keep looking down. Like I was looking up to look back. It was crazy. But it was definitely a sight to see, something I'll never forget.
Brian Branch, teammate of yours, was a teammate of Terion Arnold's at Alabama. Have you already reached out to Brian and say, hey, man, what's this cat all about?
I actually haven't. No, I have not. Everything's happening so fast right now with the draft and everything that's going on. But I'm sure, I think I'm going to see Jameer later today, so I'm going to ask him what he thinks.
Well, make sure you call us back and let us know, all right?
Hey, man, now you got that you signed that contract. You feeling some pressure for a wedding present for Jared Goff that you really got to step it up?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be at the wedding, so I'm definitely going to have something for him.
Amon-Ra, congratulations. Thanks for joining us. And Detroit loves you. Glad to have you here long term.
Appreciate it.
There he is.
Thank you.
Amon-Ra St. Brown from the Detroit Lions. We continue with our draft coverage from our draft headquarters backstage at the NFL draft at Buffalo Wild Wings here on 97.1 The Ticket.
So, listen, if you look inside your crawl space, you haven't been in there in a while, you want to check it out. Because if it's wet, you got problems. If you got a basement that's flooded with the rain we've had, you've got problems. If you want to make sure that your home is ready for the summer, get your AC checked out, do the right thing in all these accounts. The red, white, and blue trucks, they're all over the place, and they're there for a reason because people trust Birmingham Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. Frank's the owner. He's got a great deal going on this spring. This spring, they're giving all customers a free tankless water heater that's included with the purchase of a full furnace and air conditioning package. So it doesn't matter if you've got a flooded basement or if you've got an AC issue or a problem with your thermostat like I had. I called Birmingham Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. They did the job right. They did it to my satisfaction, and they did it right away. Give them a call today, or you can schedule an appointment online at birminghamplumbingco.com. Birmingham Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, your Metro Detroit boiler experts.
right, how much should we read into what Amon-Ra said about Jared Goff's contract?
Read everything into it.
Okay, so it's going to get done?
Yep.
Look,
everything I read.
Explain that story for people who weren't with us yesterday.
When I was in Jamaica as a much younger man, that was the phrase that they used down there. Everything I read, which means everything's okay, relax. You're in Jamaica.
Yep.
Enjoy it, right? Have a red stripe.
Yeah.
Smoke a blunt, whatever you got to do. Just enjoy it. I had red stripes.
So, and in the context of our interview with Amon-Ra, confident and knows he's going to get done with Jared Goff, without going into great detail, but he sounded pretty sure and really wants him to be here. You know, I've said something about Jared Goff, and I think this is true about just athletes in general. When somebody wins you over, I think the relationship and the faith and the belief in that player is stronger. Amon-Ra admitted he didn't necessarily want to be here.
Right.
Jared Goff said he felt like he was sent away to have his career die. Us in Detroit, Amon-Ra, when he was drafted, we weren't cheering in the streets. We weren't celebrating that pick. We thought it was interesting. Some of you might have been, and Jared Goff, when he came to Detroit, he was the seat warmer until they drafted the quarterback. All of us together collectively didn't have faith in each other. The players necessarily didn't have faith in the organization. The fans necessarily didn't have faith in the players. And then we've all collectively sort of been won over by the other side. Amon-Ra's a star. Jared Goff has come to Detroit and made this his place. He's calling them the best years of his career and the best thing that ever happened to him. Detroit fans who were completely dismissive of Jared Goff as the throw-in here have now chanted his name at the draft and Red Wing games.
Last night, I think just epitomizes why and how great things have changed for this franchise over the last few years since ownership changed over here, since they hired new GM, new head coach, all of that. It's all paid off to the point where they get to the NFC Championship game last year. And then last night, the excitement about this team is felt throughout. When those guys are able to go up on stage, you have the current players mixed with the Hall of Famers. I mean, you could see the smiles on their faces. We joked about it last night. I mean, they looked like a boy band out there ready to perform in front of everybody. And you heard Amon-Ra say, he's like, like Travis Scott must be like in front of hundreds of thousands of people at Coachella. And yeah, you do. Imagine what Terion Arnold must have felt like when he's walking across the stage and there's nothing but Lions fans that are screaming and going nuts because that's the guy. That's the guy. This town has transformed things to the point where St. Brown said, I didn't want to get drafted by Detroit. That's where people go to die. To the point where he's like, oh, my God, I can't wait to play here some more. Yes, I want to sign my contract and play here. And now it's a destination for players throughout, and we get to showcase that on the biggest stage of the year in the offseason, which is the NFL Draft. All these people that are watching, every college player, prospective NFL player now, they're watching this draft and seeing how Detroit warms up to their own, and it's awesome.
As recently as 2 years ago, there was speculation over the player that the Lions took first didn't want to be here. And that guy is now seems to be all in, and that might have been a mischaracterization of how he actually felt, talking about Jamison Williams. Terion Arnold turned around and said to the crowd, I'm home, right? From the same place, came from the same school where they've had a ton of success, to this organization, turned around and said, I'm home. Now, let's be clear. The Lions haven't reached the mountaintop. No. They haven't broke through the tape at the finish line first yet. But they're setting themselves up, and this guy does help. And he posted something on social media this morning that's hilarious and awesome, and we will play it for you coming up today at 11:48. It's Carson Anderson from our draft headquarters, 97.1 The Ticket.
Chevrolet.
Okay, so look, the Terion Arnold love has just started, and he loves being in Detroit, and that was evident last night on the stage when he turned to the crowd and said, "I'm home." It's just a cool moment, and we're still getting used to this. And I'm at some point we're going to stop talking about how cool it is to just be a team that's not a laughingstock anymore. But it's been such a long time. Forgive us if we keep bringing it up. But Terion Arnold this morning on Twitter, he posted a video of himself apparently laying in his bed at his hotel.
Yeah.
He's got no shirt on. He's under the covers, and he's wearing a Lions hat. And this was his message today on Twitter, Terion Arnold posting this morning on social media.
I was so happy last night I slept with my hat on, man. One pride. Went to sleep last night a Lion, woke up a Lion. One pride, man. Let's get to work.
He slept in his Lions hat.
That's awesome.
My man slept with his hat on.
I mean, it takes me back to when I was a kid, and for a birthday one year, I got a new baseball mitt, and I slept with a baseball mitt.
Yeah,
because I was so happy that I got this. It was actually a first baseman's mitt. I was so happy that I got the mitt. I mean,
was it a Lozinski model?
He didn't play first base.
I know, but I'm just trying to think.
George Scott.
Okay,
actually.
God, did he play outfield?
The Bull?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in the national because he was in the National League.
It's hard to believe that he was an outfielder.
Hey man, he was 6'1", 225.
Oh, was he?
Well, to start, when he was drafted, maybe. By the time he came to the American League with the White Sox, he was probably closer to 3 bills than he was to 225, but still productive. Yeah, but I mean, it's just you're always a kid at heart, and that's just something you would expect a kid to do. That it's playing. You're playing a child's game, and it's awesome, and you're getting paid for it, and you're here and part of it. He had a quote that I love. The quote. It was
Lozinski or Terion Arnold.
Terion Arnold.
Okay.
We're not talking about the Bull. Terion Arnold's quote was, "Be phenomenal or be forgotten," and I don't plan on being forgotten.
Wow.
I love it. I love it. This guy's got all the confidence. There's a reason he's confident. He's a very talented young man. And, I remember people saying last night when we're thinking about the pick at 29 and we want Kool-Aid McKinstry, and people would say, well, why do you want, Kool-Aid's the second best guy in his team? Well, it's Alabama. So the second best guy might be better than just about everybody else in college football, but they didn't get the second best guy. And they got the best guy from Alabama. And maybe the best cover corner they've had in a while.
Yeah, it seems like a guy who's got the right wiring, the athletic skills. The probability of him being a player seems pretty high. Here's some feedback that's coming in, and we're going to get into what we hope happens today, including Fresh Mel. We had to push it back, move things around. Amon-Ra had to reschedule, so we'll get to the Fresh Mel today at 12:02 without further ado. But feedback on what people want to have happen today from an unnamed texter. Could they trade next year's second for more picks today? Perhaps a third and a fourth. They could. I don't know that I necessarily want that. They're in a position. I mean, look, if there are players that they are just so convinced are going to be studs, then they might make a move. The board has to fall that way. But I like giving Brad Holmes a bunch of picks. And I see why they did what they did. There's a price to be paid. I see why they traded for Carlton Davis. They give up a third rounder there. But really what they've got is a chance to populate the roster with useful, cheap players with those picks next year. So I don't know that they do it again, give up future picks. Like already, I think it was Minnesota that only has 3 picks next year.
Well, yeah, because they had to move up twice.
Yeah. Jordan in a car says, I love the pick last night, and it was a steal. I would love to see us make a trade today with Pittsburgh for their third and fourth. Moving back could be in play. Unnamed texter, Zach Frazier in round 2. Well, that would be pretty remarkable. That would be pretty remarkable if Zach Frazier's still on the board at 61.
Yeah, if they get one of those interior offensive linemen, I'd be thrilled about that. I mean, that's kind of where I'm looking for the Lions, but I'm looking at it for position of need, not necessarily with the best player available like Brad Holmes likes to do, but I think there might be a matchup there. We'll see what pool of players is available to them when they do select there, but I'm not going to be surprised if he is patient and pounces again. which means would he move up again to get a guy that he covets? I'm not going to be surprised by that. And I know that might be disappointing to people because they like to watch him cook, like you like to watch him cook with later picks. But the Lions are in a position right now that they don't have to maximize their picks. What they can do right now is maximize the value of the player because they've built depth throughout the last 3 drafts and last 3 off seasons with free agency. So now they can afford to go out and find the best player to fit this team immediately. And they don't have many spots on this roster.
Next up, I love it. CB1 at 24, arguably the best cornerback in the draft, played against SEC competition every week, and we know they just run faster in the SEC. That's from Jay on the Ladder. Scott writes in, Brad has proven we need to trust his judgment, so I do. Next season will be special. And Jim in Sterling Heights writes, everyone loves the way Holmes drafts, and then they question his move last night. He felt that Arnold was that much better than the other choices available that he sent at 3rd to move up. The levels of players on the team already may make it much more difficult for lower picks to make the team. So, Jim, I'll say this. I think you've kind of overstated the case when you say everyone loves the way Holmes drafts and then questions the move last night. Some people question the move last night, but let's not overstate that case. We've asked people on Twitter to answer the question, did you love it? Did you just like it? Did you not like it? Or did you hate it? Love it, 73.3%. Like it, 24.5%. Don't like it, 1.5%. Hate it, 0.7%. So there's not too many people that are calling out Brad Holmes for this move. Now, as far as spots to make the roster, maybe not in the immediate short term, but they're going to need some guys because when you're paying Amon-Ra and you're paying Penei Sewell and you're paying what we assume is to be about to pay Jared Goff, it'd be great to have a 4th-round pick, a 5th-round pick, the diamonds in the rough that Holmes is so good at uncovering because they make almost nothing, and if they can play, it helps you balance the books under the cap. So there's an eventually paying the piper that has to take place. And there might not be immediate roster spots, but they want to get some of those guys.
Well, that's the problem when you hit on all these picks.
Yep.
It's a
great problem to have.
Yeah, it's a great problem to have. But hopefully the team is performing that way on the field as well. And, we had one season where we're coming off this amazing playoff year. Amazing year.
All right, Mel Kiper did mock draft for the 2nd round and a name we love, a couple of them still on the board. At 61, we will get to that at 12:02 here on Carson Anderson leading into Tiger baseball. Tigers 110 first pitch over at Comerica Park, 97-1 the ticket.
It's NFL Draft Week.
Live from Buffalo Wild Wings downtown Detroit, Karsh and Anderson, brought to you by Sarah Chevrolet.
On 97.1, The Ticket.
Thanks for being with us. We'll hear a little bit of Brad Holmes, the best of what he had to say to the media last night regarding his new toy, Terion Arnold, that the Lions got at 24, moving up with Dallas in a great turn of events for the Detroit Lions and the city of Detroit. What a night. What a night. Detroit was a star. And look forward to doing it all over again today. Get down here early. Remember last night we broke the draft. Too many people showed up, which was great for all the bars and restaurants around because then they had to repopulate some of those areas. But we're at Buffalo Wild Wings, and we'll be broadcasting leading up to Tiger baseball here momentarily. Scott, Kang,
Doug,
we've got some fresh Mel.
Oh.
Round 2 mock draft. Okay, there's a lot of players left that I would imagine Lion fans covet. Do they get any of them? Well, the first pick goes to the Buffalo Bills, trading with Carolina, and they select Cooper DeJean, cornerback, Iowa. With the second pick, at pick 34, the New England Patriots take Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver, Texas. Kool-Aid McKinstry goes to the Cardinals at pick 35. At 36, the Commanders take Enos Rakestraw, cornerback, Missouri. Other picks of interest, Lion fans, players they may covet. The Los Angeles Chargers take Ladd McConkey, wide receiver, Georgia, at pick 37.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
At pick 38, Tennessee Titans take Jerjon Newton, defensive tackle, Illinois.
Sorry, King.
Boo.
At 39, the Carolina Panthers select Marshawn Nealon, edge rusher, Western Michigan. At 41, the Green Bay Packers take Kamari Lassiter, cornerback, Georgia.
Did you pass the Bears pick already by chance?
The Bears didn't pick.
Okay.
Yes, they don't have a pick yet.
All right. I just wanted to make sure we don't.
They traded it to Washington, who took Edgerrin Cooper, the linebacker from Texas A&M, at 40. Brandon Fisk, defensive tackle, Florida State, goes to Houston at 42. Atlanta at 43, really to drive home a point, they take Michael Penix again. No, they take TJ Tampa, corner from Iowa State. Other picks that might interest the Detroit Lions fan base. New Orleans at 45, Jackson Powers Johnson, interior offensive lineman from Oregon.
There he goes.
Still a bunch of guys out there, though.
There are.
At 47, the New York Giants take Tyler Nubin, safety, Minnesota. At 48, Jacksonville takes Chris Jenkins, defensive tackle, Michigan. At 49, Cincinnati takes Keon Coleman, wide receiver, Florida State.
49, wow.
At 50, Philadelphia takes Junior Colson, linebacker, Michigan. At 51, Pittsburgh selects Jalen Polk, wide receiver, Washington.
Good pick.
At 52, the Los Angeles Rams, check that, the Philadelphia Eagles take Kinsley Sumaataya, the offensive tackle from BYU.
Crap.
At 54, Cleveland goes Chris Braswell, edge rusher, Alabama. Still some names out there.
Yeah, I'm still.
56, Dallas takes Devondre Sweat, defensive tackle, Texas.
That's a Dallas pick.
Moving ahead, 58, Javon Bullard, safety, Georgia, goes to the Pack.
Okay, all right.
59, or check that, 60, Buffalo goes Troy Franklin, wide receiver, Oregon.
All right, here we go.
The Detroit Lions are on the clock. Here,
by the way, Troy Franklin's a really nice pick.
Yeah.
That's a lot of production that young man had.
Here's who's still on the board for the Lions. Zach Zinter.
Yeah.
Guard, Michigan.
There's another Zach.
Mikey Sainristel, safety/corner, Michigan. Zach Frazier.
There it is.
Interior offensive lineman, West Virginia. Roger Rosengarten, tackle, Washington. And Jalix Hunt, defensive lineman from Houston Christian. There is a lot there to look at. But does one name stand out to you?
Yes. One name stands out to me. And I'm also looking at this and thinking, is there any way to trade back? To maybe get an extra pick later on in the draft. Not trade back too far, somewhere early in the third round, one of the first few picks. But if I'm there at 61, there's definitely one name that stands out to me.
If you're trading back Is it to get somebody specific, hoping that player drops? Or is there a couple of players in the bucket?
There's a couple of players in the bucket. Number one right now that I would do if I wasn't able to trade back would be Zach Frazier. That's the guy.
Yep.
That is absolutely the guy.
Interior offensive lineman from West Virginia.
Yep. And then if I'm thinking about trading back, it's because I can maybe get Zach Zinter.
Mm-hmm.
And not knowing when he's going to come back and participate as a full-time participant in practice, but hopefully it's by training camp at some point. But I don't need him to play right away, even though you might need somebody to play right away. But they've got starters ahead of him. But he's awfully good, and if he didn't break his leg, he might have been a first-day pick. So.
All right, well, Kang, your thoughts on the board here at 61. Zinter, Sainristil, Zach Frazier, Roger Rosengarten, and Jalix Hunt, all available. Any of those guys stand out to you?
Frazier, for sure. He's the one that I would want clearly above the other guys. That's me.
All right, so the pick is in. And according to Mel Kiper at 61, the Detroit Lions select Jalix Hunt, edge rusher, Houston Christian.
Boo.
And he writes, Hunt is a talented and versatile player with a high ceiling who has the potential to develop into an excellent complement to Aiden Hutchinson. He had 6.5 sacks last season and stood out at the Senior Bowl.
He had 6.5, huh? Playing where?
Houston Christian.
That sounds like a heck of a lot of production.
Stood out the Senior Bowl.
Great. Okay.
The second round continues. Roger Rosengarten, tackle from Georgia, goes to Baltimore at 62. At 63, the San Francisco 49ers get Zach Frazier, interior offensive lineman, West Virginia. So if you trade back and you want him, moral of this story, I guess, is don't go too far. Right?
Well, potentially, yeah. I mean, there are other players, though. I mean, other positions. Jalen McMillan. Imagine he's available. You got some the wide receivers. There's lots of wide receivers that are still possibilities, too.
Yes.
But I would rather have an interior offensive lineman. But, again, it depends on what their board looks like and which player they value more.
Well, that is Mel 2.0, and I should say second round, not 2.0. So it's amazing how many players are still on the board that the Lions could covet. And we'll see what they do tonight, 7 o'clock. If you're making your way down here, remember to get here early enough to get into the footprint, because last night they closed it off, and a lot of people were locked out. But that's a good problem to have, right? People showed up. People showed up in numbers here in Detroit.
Yeah, they definitely did. The pop that those guys got when they came out last night with Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Aiden Hutchinson and, of course, the legendary Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson, that was awesome.
Really cool.
It was really awesome.
I don't know if there's a Detroit sports figure that is nationally beloved as Barry Sanders. Everybody loves Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
Everybody loves Barry Sanders.
Even though we hated him for a time.
Well, it was an uncomfortable end to the relationship.
Very uncomfortable. It took a few years to come back, but I mean, then you see that smiling face, and you're like, oh, it's Barry. It's okay. We love you, Barry.
Yep. And Calvin, same thing.
Yeah.
And Calvin now a beloved figure for Detroit
Calvin.
sports fans. And it's off to a good start as far as Terion Arnold, but we really won't know until he hits the field. Could be CB1 right out of the gate, but there's no doubt that the secondary is better than what they finished with last year. So Brad Holmes doing work to go get a guy that could make an immediate impact at corner.
I'm really looking forward to hearing when somebody gets a hold of Brian Branch, and Amon-Ra St. Brown said he's going to talk to Jahmyr Gibbs about him, but I want to hear what his teammates had to say about this guy. Like, are they, is Brian Branch going, like, is he clapping his hands? Is he rubbing them together? Like, I cannot wait. People have no idea how good this guy is, or something like that. And the Alabama connection is huge, and obviously it's one of the best programs in college football. And to go to that pipeline and see all these guys, first-round talents. This guy, a lot of people had him top of the board among all cornerbacks, and he's now a Detroit Lion because the Lions used a third-round pick to move up.
It was kind of an animal day yesterday here at B-Dubs. I was here for 16 hours.
That's a bit much.
I got home, got to bed. It was after 2 o'clock, up at 5:45, and back at it today as the Lions round 2 and round 3, Detroit hosting the NFL draft. Hear what Brad Holmes had to say about the first-round pick they got. Nick Saban's thoughts on Terion Arnold. All that coming up here on Carson Anderson from just across the street, backstage at the draft. Our coverage continues from our draft headquarters here on 97.1 The Ticket. Hey, spring is here, and so are the Silverados and Equinoxes at your number one volume Chevy dealer in Michigan, Sarah Chevrolet Sterling Heights. And that means Sarah Chevrolet Sterling Heights has a huge inventory of Silverados and Equinoxes that are ready for you to test drive and take home today. Plus, it's truck season, so now is the time to get that Silverado you've been dreaming of. Sarah Chevrolet Sterling Heights, where they guarantee the lowest price or it's free. 17.5 in Van Dyke, in Sterling Heights. Call 87-SAY-SARAH or go to saysarah.com. Together, let's drive. Doug Carson, Scott Anderson here, backstage of the NFL draft just across the street from the big tent. We saw players going into the green room from our broadcast location, and It's my first. I've seen this B-Dubs a lot. I've never been in here. What a great spot.
Yeah, I have. I've walked past it a million times going from the parking garage where we park for Lions games, which is literally right there, and going to Ford Field. This place is awesome.
I'm gonna make a prediction here. We will be back.
Yeah, I could see that. Really nice place to have private events. It's cool.
Okay, let's get to Brad Holmes, Lions general manager. Of course, last night got their guy, made the move, aggressive. Terion Arnold, cornerback, Alabama, now a Detroit Lion. Brad Holmes met with the media and talked about where they saw Arnold ranked amongst players available in this year's draft.
We had a pretty, let's call it, significant line underneath him to the next guy, in our opinion. So it wasn't, we didn't have a lot of guys that were up there, even in, that first round bucket at that position. So, but he was one of those small few that was even up there in consideration for us. But it was a line.
I mean, when you hear that they had essentially 15 players in the top bucket, as Dan Campbell implied on our program, the head coach, I think the way they look at it, they didn't trade up 5 spots from 29 to 24 to get Terion Arnold. I think they feel like they traded up from 29 to 15 to get Terion Arnold.
I agree with you. I look at it the same way. I think this is a guy that they obviously coveted and really liked, and because the draft went the way it did, maybe something that looked like it was too daunting to go and do, to trade up because it would cost you, future draft capital, which could be way, way too damaging, all of a sudden became quite doable. And the first corner doesn't go off the board until, 22? So they had a chance to get Terion Arnold, who they had number 1 on their corner chart, and they got him. And the cost is a third-round pick, which kind of sucks for today because you want to have 2 picks today and really enjoy it. But in the end, you tell me that they're going to use a third-round pick in the draft to maneuver so they can move up to take Terion Arnold. And I'm like, are you kidding me? How does that happen?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm being very selfish, and I love the fun of watching what Holmes will do in the middle rounds, but they went out and got a guy.
They got a guy.
Yeah, so scouting report on the player. Here's what the Lions GM, Brad Holmes, says they're getting in Terion Arnold.
He's sticky. He can play man coverage. The thing about Terion, what's great about him, some of these guys, they are what they are, or, you might say, well, the ceiling might not be as high, but the thing about him is you go back to his 22 film, you go back to earlier this season, and you saw an incremental just improvement every single game.
Well, look, the ceiling is the roof with this kid, and definitely a sticky. Sticky's a good term for a corner.
Sticky's a great term.
Yep. This guy, checked a lot of the boxes, and they had him in for an interview, liked what they heard. They obviously could go with some of the knowledge of having some of his Alabama teammates. It's interesting that they have gone in the last 3 years their first pick. Alabama, Alabama, Alabama.
Yeah. I mean, well, in 1 year with JMO, they did have a couple picks, but yes.
I looked it up, too. Alabama's got a good team.
Do they?
Yeah, I looked it up. Huh. Next up, I think it was Wojo that asked the question about this being one of those years where they always say they want to go BPA, but did the need at that position actually match up with the BPA from where they ended up drafting? Here's what Brad Holmes had to say.
It doesn't always match up that way. I know you guys have heard me say a million times, we don't care what the position is. We're just going to get the best football player, but it happened to match up with it's the best football player, and, it was an area where we wanted to add one at some point. We didn't know if we were going to be able to add one in the first round. And be quite honest, we weren't really anticipating being able to add one in the first round. So we just kind of thought we would kind of be out of the mix for a lot of those guys, especially him.
They weren't out of the mix at all.
No, and look, it seems like, and we've heard him say this before, that they couldn't believe this guy was there, or that this was the guy that they targeted and they wanted to get him, and they went in and got him. And it felt like last year Brian Branch was that player. Like, you can't believe Brian Branch is available in the second round. Nobody took him in the first? Okay. And they went and got him, and Laporta was a byproduct of trading back. They were able to use that pick there. It doesn't always work out that way, right? Because Brad Holmes was very excited the first draft when it took Levi Onwuzurike, and he kept wanting to trade up to get him, and was talked down by the room. Said, "No, we just let it be patient, see what happens." And then he fell to him in the second round, and it hasn't worked out. They don't all work out, but so far most of them have.
It's amazing. Their hit rate is very high.
Yeah.
Kang, before we get to Nick Saban, your thoughts on anything there Brad Holmes had to say?
The weird thing about Brad Holmes says a lot of stuff, a lot of cliche stuff general managers around every NFL town say all the time. They all say the same stuff. The difference with Brad Holmes is I actually believe him. So he's built up that trust, though. He's built up that cachet with me where, like, when he says he was our number 1 rated player on the board, I believe him. You know, when they say that I couldn't believe he fell, I believe him. So I don't know. Maybe it's me being gullible and naive, but I'm behind Holmes. I'm behind this pick. I'm glad they got aggressive. I'm glad they waited till I feel like the perfect time, and it didn't cost them as much as it could have.
All right, Nick Saban. He was on the ABC broadcast last night. Of course, Coach Terion Arnold at Alabama, and here is what the retired Bama Hall of Fame coach had to say.
I love this guy because this guy improved so much from last year. And all the guys that get frustrated with their circumstance and transfer or whatever, he stuck it out. He stayed there. He never once talked about getting in the portal, and he just worked his tail off. And I work with him all the time because I kind of coach the corners. That's what I like doing.
Yeah.
But the guy did a great job and improved so much. And I'm so happy to see him end up where he is.
Kind of like Saban.
Listen, I mean, Nick is one of these polarizing figures. I get it. And being a Spartan, got mixed feelings on it. But as time goes on, it's like I have nothing but respect for him as a coach because in the end, you can have all the recruits you want, but you still do have to coach them. They don't all work out. And knowing this about Nick from way back when, that he is a defensive backs coach, right?
Yep.
D'Antonio, defensive backs coach. And they put their stamp of approval on things, and when they take it personally, like Saban does, and you look at all the corners that they've produced to the NFL, it's an impressive list, and this guy is just another one on that list, and he genuinely seemed excited and amped for Terion Arnold moving forward.
Let's get back to your phone calls, 248-539-9797. We go to Doug. You're on 97.1 The Ticket. What's up, Doug?
Hey, guys, I just wanted to say I've always wanted to call into the show, but you guys are always on at work, but I've always wanted to talk to you guys. I always watch your YouTube clips. But, it was the craziest thing last night watching all those high-profile defensive players fall. And the fact is I feel like with Sewell, too, Arnold fell right into our laps. And not only was he one of the best defensive players on our board probably, but it was a high need position. And people, like, I've read some comments, well, why trade up? It's like, if that's your guy, we got to go get him. Not necessarily because everybody's been belly aching, too, about how, our corners and our secondary have been such, so subject in the last couple of years. Well, hopefully now we got our Sauce Gardner. We got a lockdown CB1. We didn't need to go get Snead. He could possibly lock down the whole other side of the field, which then allows the rest of our secondary to perhaps, just not have to have the pressure off. And so this is a perfect pick. I absolutely love it. And obviously with the track record of our brilliant general manager, I trust him 100%. He fell right into our laps. It went perfectly for us as a fan base last night with it being in our hometown and everything happening and the craziness with all the quarterbacks and offensive talent taken. This was absolutely everything I think as a fan base we wanted.
Well, Doug, I'll tell you what. I mean, I've even set the bar a little bit lower. If he's just above average next year, the team that takes the field in San Francisco at the NFC title game has a better chance to win that game. If he is a lockdown corner CB1, the team that took the field in San Francisco with Terion Arnold wins that game. So we're talking about a player that even just starting his career slow, even if he's not a quote-unquote star, but he's just really, really good or just slightly above average, he improves the secondary. And you start looking at the names, Carlton Davis in, Amik Robertson in, Terion Arnold in, and you start to realize, wow, that's a better group than they had last year. If one of the offseason goals was to parade out a better secondary in 2024, mission accomplished. Now, it could be an elite group if Terion Arnold is a lockdown guy. and Brian Branch just gets better, and if Fatu Melifonwu just gets better. If Carlton Davis is your CB2, that's pretty good.
I like it.
Hey, thank you for the phone call. 248-539-9797. And glad you could get through. I'm glad you could finally have the free time to get through. We will continue. Don't forget Tiger Baseball coming up this afternoon here on 97.1 The Ticket.
Well,
Live from Buffalo Wild Wings downtown Detroit.
Draft Week 2024.
Okay, Karsh and Anderson, brought to you by Sarah Chevrolet.
All right, Gator, getting a little bit into what we hope happens today. You've got the dream scenario. Okay, so who's the Terion Arnold of today? And what I mean by that, Lions are 29 picks away. Who's the player that we just won't be able to believe is still on the board? I mean, I'm looking at Jerjon Newton, Zach Frazier are probably the two. Something tells me Ladd McConkey would be the wide receiver from Georgia, would be a great addition. I'd probably put those players 1, 2, 3 on my wish list for today.
I would throw Newton, Keon Coleman, and maybe Jackson Powers Johnson.
Yep. Kang, I know you're a one-track mind, but in the given that you desperately wanted Johnny Newton at the end of the first round, you will be very happy with him at the end of the second round. Seems unlikely, but is there anybody else in that group that you hope drops to the Lions?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, you know how I feel about Newton. I'd give up the rest of the draft to move up to get Newton, depending where he falls, of course. Other than Newton, though, I'm looking at Frazier, and I'm looking at a wideout. I mean, that could be Keon Coleman. That could be Jalen Polk. That type of guy right there.
Well, we'll be watching tonight, second and third round in Detroit. And don't forget, tomorrow afternoon, rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 here in Detroit. So,
weather might be a little iffy tomorrow.
Yeah. Kang, have you made a plan with the daughters? Are you taking the advice and bringing the stroller and the two girls down here later today?
It sounds like if you stay away from the draft theater area, and especially before the draft even starts, I assume that it's going to be fine. You know, that I guess more around Hart Plaza seems like feedback's been coming in that it's a stroller-friendly area and all that. So, it's not going to deter me. The only thing that's going to deter me is the wife will come with me. Because I don't want to handle 2 kids by myself. I guess I could just take one.
There you go.
You can't do that. You can't split them up.
No.
Nah.
No.
Okay, so Tiger baseball this afternoon. The Kansas City Royals are in town. This is not what it was billed to be. This was supposed to be a series where the Tigers, this is where you start stacking wins, right? Well, Kansas City comes in at 16-10 and ahead of the Tigers in the standings. What the hell's going on around here?
Listen, it's what Kansas City does this. I've said for, I think, 20 years now, that Kansas City is like the best minor league team for baseball.
Right.
Because they're always bad for a while, but they get these players, they draft them, they develop them, and then all of a sudden they become good. But the window of opportunity is very, very small because they can only hang on to them for a little bit, and then they have to sell them off because they're part of the have-nots. They can't afford to hang on to their players. They've had some amazing players over their time, and right now these guys are really starting to play at a high level. So I'm not terribly surprised that Kansas City is good. I might be surprised they're good this quickly from being in the doldrums. But nonetheless, look, Tigers are playing pretty good baseball as well. Reese Olson on the hill today, looking for his first win of the season. It'd be nice if he can get that. Start to see some bats warming up a little bit. Temperatures are warming up a little bit. Although when I was walking here, it seemed like the wind was blowing in from Comerica Park. So maybe it's a lower scoring affair, and does that benefit the Tigers? I think it does.
Has there been a more hard luck pitcher than Reese Olson this year for the Tigers, being 0-3? Seems like he's pitched better than that.
Hey, I think he's had a couple of really good outings,
yeah.
And then maybe one not so good outing.
Last time out, I guess it was 2 starts ago, he lost 1-0 to Texas.
Yeah, well, that hurts.
Yep.
Because if you get hurts it because when you hold that lineup to 1 run, you should win a game. Well, y'all better win a game.
Yes.
And they did not go out there and win a game. But I'm excited about this series because it's a little bit of a test early on.
Okay, so one of my bold-ass predictions this year was that Jackson Jobe, the number 22 prospect in baseball, would get called up and pitch for the Tigers this year. Yesterday, he pitched 4 scoreless innings at Double-A Erie, and after the game said, quote, "I want to pitch in the big leagues this year."
Well, they weren't just scoreless.
Well, they were no hit, right?
They were no hit innings too. Yeah,
yep.
He had 1 walk and struck out, I think 6 in that game. But yeah, he's had a couple of really good outings, but it's 4 innings. They're still building him up a little bit. We got excited about him in the spring when he threw the 1 inning.
Yep,
because he hit triple digits a number of times. But he's the real deal. I mean, everybody talked about him as a high schooler coming into the draft, that he had incredible stuff. And it was too good for the Tigers to pass up. And they passed up on some shortstops in that draft. They took Jackson Jobe. They've taken their lumps from the media about that.
Mm-hmm.
And, when all is said and done, here it is a few years later, he might be knocking on the door at some point. But right now, this is a tough rotation to get into. I mean, Matt Manning can't get into this rotation right now.
Well, it's tough-ish. I mean, probably the two guys whose spots in the rotation are a little bit sketchy are two guys that they have a financial commitment to.
That's the problem.
But if at some point, your patience runs out and needing to win overrides it, it's probably not 27 games into the season or whatever we are, but Kenta Maeda had a much-needed good start, and it's time for Reese Olson to get some results. But I think Reese Olson is going to keep getting starts if he keeps pitching the way he's pitching. His ERA is 3.4 or 3.5 or something like that. So
yeah, but Job's got some work to do. Obviously, he's just so early on, and again, he only threw, I think, 60-something pitches last night. Matt Manning would be the next one to get his opportunities. He's already made a couple of spot starts. Ty Madden, I don't know if he's ahead of Jackson Jobe in the pecking order or if they've got another pitcher at AAA that might be ahead. But Jobe's going to be, if he continues to pitch like he's been pitching and like how they expect him to, he'll rise quick enough. I don't know if he's going to reach the majors this year. I think that's really dependent on the health of your rotation.
I will shoot the boot. No, I won't shoot the boot. But I do love what we've seen. I mean, his stuff is filthy. I got down a YouTube wormhole clip watching him in the offseason and was like, oh, my God.
Hey, by the way, this is how you know it's early in the season. Saw that Max Clark 2 days ago, after a nice outing, had brought his average up to 315.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is what happens early in the season.
After he started like 1 for 20?
Yeah, he I think was 0 for his first 3 games and then started to hit a little bit, and then he's hit a lot. But he went 0 for 5 last night, and his batting average dropped down like 279.
Yeah.
So it's early in the season where you get the big volatile swings in your batting average. But nonetheless, that's our guy, and want to see him succeed.
And Gator, it's Dan Dickerson bobblehead day.
Tomorrow.
Is that tomorrow? I thought it was today.
I think
is that tomorrow
night? Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, Dan is one of the great dudes in broadcasting. We are blessed with some great voices here in Detroit. And also after the Tiger game, Mike Enrico will be back here. Mike, last night, draft coverage. It's like wind up Mike and let him go. He's incredible with this stuff. So I'm sure he will be all over what happens in round 2 of the draft. That is later tonight. Hey, look, as we wrap up from here at Buffalo Wild Wings, there's a lot of people to thank. Our engineering crew, Bobby and Jake and Ryan, who's in charge of everything, and Robbie, and I shouldn't start naming people because I'm going to come up short, but they did a great job on the cameras. Roberto and Ben, do appreciate the work they did, giving you the video feed. The people here at Buffalo Wild Wings have been awfully hospitable, met a lot of fans. Thank you for coming by. Also, our promotion staff, led by Lori, who's kind of a behind-the-scenes rock star that people don't know about, but none of this gets done without her hard work. Jimmy Powers, our program director, is here. He didn't mess up anything.
Well, not yet.
Yes.
Don't jinx him.
That's right. So I do want to thank all of our crew here. Evan Jenkins was here from our website, putting in hard work and long hours. So thank you to everybody for that, as we had a great time. We had a great time covering this draft.
Yeah, and thank you, Detroit. My God, has this been an amazing event so far. We're going to see how day 2 goes. No reason to think it shouldn't be great as well. Starting on the weekend.
Gator,
nice.
The pick is in. At number 61, I think the Detroit Lions get Cooper Beebe, guard, Kansas State. You got a prediction?
I don't. It's
No?
so far back. I can't do it. I will say this. I predict they take a offensive lineman.
Okay.
At
Kang,
61.
you got a prediction?
Yeah, they trade everything they have to move up to Johnny Newton.
He's been consistent with that.
And my other prediction is the Atlanta Falcons select quarterback Spencer Rattler.
There you go. They might get Keaton Slovis later in the draft.
Yeah, well,
load up on quarterbacks.
Theo Day.
All right. Hey, have a great day, everybody. Kang, thank you back in the studio. And Paul did a wonderful job last night during the draft in a very difficult set of circumstances. Tiger baseball is coming up next as the Tigers take on the Kansas City Royals this afternoon. Stay safe, everyone, and treat each other with respect. 97-1 The Ticket.